All right, welcome council to our special council meeting of Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. It is 2:07 p.m. and I'll call the meeting to order and acknowledge that all members of council are present except for Councillor Cox, who does send his regrets. At this time, I'd like to proceed with our township land acknowledgement. The township of Adjala-Tosorontio is situated on the lands within Treaty 18, being a traditional territory of the Nanshaabeg peoples, including the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. This land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We acknowledge Indigenous peoples as stewards of the land, and we honor their resilience as well as their culture and of our shared respect for the lands, plants, animals, and waterways, which sustains us all. We recognize the injustices against Indigenous peoples and are mindful that the decisions of government impact our shared land and all the inhabitants. We commit to reconciliation as a journey, foster Indigenous cultural awareness and educational opportunities, establish respectful and healthy relations with Indigenous peoples, continue to steward the land and its inhabitants, and to cultivate an inclusive community for all. Item 2 on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a mover for that, Council? Councillor Simpson, Councillor Borzos. That the agenda for the special council meeting held on Tuesday, February 25th, 2025 be adopted as presented. Any questions on the agenda? And all those in favor? And that is carried. Item 3 is disclosure of pecuniary interests. Are there any items to declare at the present time? Seeing none, if you do find yourself in that situation, please declare at that time. And we're on to item 4, which is public comment. Members of the public may request their comments to be read by the clerk or present their comments orally. Only public comments related to an item on the agenda listed as staff reports, correspondence, and bylaws will be considered. Are there any persons wishing to provide comments? Seeing none, Madam Deputy Clerk, did we receive any comments to writing?
No comments were received, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right, so we're on to item 5, which is staff reports. Topic is Planning Report 2025-006, SB Adjala Developments Incorporated, with regards to the development informally known as Rondex. So who am I going to? Mary? Ms. Feely, thank you very much for joining us today. If you'd like to provide us an overview, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship and members of council. So just to start, my role here is Mary Feely, and I'm Senior Planner at SGL. And I've been retained on behalf of the township to assist with various planning matters. So that's my role here today. Today's report brings back two things: the proposed red line revisions to the Rondex, formerly known as Rondex Draft Plan of Subdivision, that align with the accepted engineering plans, as well as bring back the subdivision agreement as revised in response to the comments that we heard at the last council meeting. Just wanted to take this opportunity to take a bit of a step back and just highlight where subdivision agreements stand in the process. So really, they're the final stage of the planning approval process. After all of the details of the development have been secured through the zoning, through the draft plan conditions, then you find yourself arriving at final approval through execution of the subdivision agreement. Inherently, it's a pretty administrative process, usually typically undertaken by planning, engineering, and legal, and that expertise and those lenses to ensure that that legal contract, that is the subdivision agreement, ensures that the approved development is built to the satisfaction of the township and other agencies like the TRCA, and that the conditions of draft approval, in this case 81 conditions of draft approval, have been incorporated into that subdivision agreement. So the legal aspect of the subdivision agreement that's before you is rather straightforward in that it is the township standard template for subdivision agreements that council has approved in the past, except for minor revisions to it or modifications to reflect the rural nature of the subdivision. Private servicing is one example instead of public services. But we do have the English here from BLG Council to advise further in closed session should there be any further questions regarding the legality or legal questions regarding the subdivision agreement. As for the 81 conditions of draft approval, legal, planning, and engineer have all reviewed and ensured that the agreement incorporates all 81 conditions. And a further step back, so the development, the Rondex development as it was formerly known, it was approved initially in 1991 by the township through the official plan amendment. In 2018, LPAT, now Ontario Land Tribunal or OLT, approved the conditions of draft approval and the zoning. The subdivision agreement that's before you today reflects those approvals that are already in place. Any changes to the subdivision agreement that don't align with those conditions is outside of the jurisdiction of the township, given that the OLT approved the conditions, not the township. And the OLT has given the township authority or jurisdiction to clear the conditions and the final approval or subdivision agreement, which is what's before you today. In response to what we heard at council last meeting, there has been changes made to the subdivision agreement, and they've been detailed in the staff report that's on today's agenda. By and large, the changes that have made was really a belt and suspenders approach. So some of those aspects were already captured in the subdivision agreement and elsewhere, or they would be captured through a future building permit approval process. However, those changes were put, a lot of those changes were put into the agreement. One change to note is that the securities or deposit for vacant lots at the time of assumption has increased from $2,000 to $3,000 per lot. And that is in addition to the $6,000 deposit per lot for final grading. And just a further overview of the subdivision process. So upon execution of the subdivision agreement, the future that puts in play future stages of a subdivision agreement. The first one being after execution would be acceptance of the works, or otherwise known as substantial completion. And that's when all of your works, your stormwater management, fencing, traffic, landscaping, when those have been completed to the satisfaction of the township. Then there is a works maintenance period, and that goes at least 2 years, where the owner maintains at their expense all of those works. Then at the time of assumption, after the owner meets all of the conditions detailed in Schedule O, and that includes the cleaning, the clearing, the certifying of the works, any repairs, then is the point of assumption. And following that, there's a further guarantee period of 2 years. And during that 2-year period, minimum 2-year period, 15% of that deposit is held back and is there for the township if needed, if any of the works aren't performing or operating as intended. So through all of the clauses within the subdivision agreement and the stages that have been secured through it, all of the necessary checks and balances are in place to ensure that this development, as approved, would be built out as intended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the clarification and updates to that. I also did want to welcome Mr. English to the meeting. Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson, thank you for joining us. Mr. Womans, thank you. So we do have some technical expertise here. If there are further questions from council, we can go in camera as well to discuss some more legal pressing issues if there are any discussions with the actual agreement itself. I did want to just start off with a comment or a question, I guess, into the respect. The revisions that have since been made to the subdivision agreement have been okayed by the applicant, and they're content with these changes?
Your worship, my apologies. Yes, they have been accepted by the owners, the changes to the subdivision agreement. Okay. Thank you.
So I'd also like to just remind council, this is a document that has been negotiated by 2 parties. And if there's wish for further negotiations from council on this matter, that would be an in-camera discussion. We would go in camera to discuss those suggestions so that there's no impropriety for the other party. And having said that, again, anything that would come out of potential discussion today would be suggestions through to staff and to our legal team to see what they can implement in an agreement, and not necessarily a direction that they be implemented in an agreement. Because again, there is negotiations to be had if that's a discussion point. So I'll open the floor to any questions off the report. I believe we will go on camera at a future time here. I do think we should go on camera, but I will go around first to see if there's any discussions from council on the topics that are laid out within the report. Is there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Meadows?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question for Ms. Vahili and our legal team. When this went to the OLT, there was several statements that came back from the OLT with regards to things that should be in that agreement. There was a whole list. Was that whole list encompassed in this agreement, or was it only a partial amount of stuff that was put in there? I just want to make sure that everything was captured that was on past and present information given to the legal team.
Certainly, through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councilor Meadows. That's an excellent question, and one of the main reasons we were retained to review the agreement. The first thing we did was take the 81 conditions, go through every one, review. We set a little table, evaluated where each condition was reflected in the agreement, and made revisions to ensure that they were all there. So all conditions of approval are contained within the agreement, and that's a belt and suspenders approach as well, in the fact that the conditions still remain until the final approval is given. So this subdivision agreement, the entering into the subdivision agreement itself, doesn't necessarily mean all the conditions have been cleared. So the conditions are established by the tribunal. They all need to be satisfied, and we recorded them in the agreement so that after final approval, they have a contractual obligation to fulfill them if they haven't been completed. So yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah, I was just concerned because in the last subdivision agreement, some issues were changed and reworded. So I just want to make sure that that hasn't happened in this case. Also, let's say the developer is in arrears of paying off anything owed to the township, DC charges or works that the township has had to do in around that area and stuff like that. Is there? I don't remember seeing a clause with regards to putting a hold on the development after 60 days. I saw that in one of the past agreements. I was just wondering if that's in the agreement or not.
I can't answer. I'll look, but I don't know if that's the case. If there's once the final approval has been granted and the agreement is entered into, is the agreement that governs the contractual relationship. There's no sort of, stop work provision that I'm aware of. Things are outstanding, like development charges. Development charges are their own beast and have their own legislative framework and obligations and mechanisms to compel payment of development charges, including the building code. But I'll take a quick look now and see if there is anything that would make the developer stop. Once you put the shovel in the ground, you want to keep going. And there's opportunity for the municipality to step in if the works aren't being completed.
Yeah, I'm just.
Let me just, so Mr. Thompson probably could answer some of that question. And Mr. Thompson, could you come up and use the mic, please, at the podium, please?
Worship, Councilor Meadows, great question. But I try to get the essence of
It's fine.
That is in the agreement. All of the security. But we don't back to the
Supplemental. It's just that I remember reading that just recently in one of the documents that came forward in past council. And if he was delinquent in his payments to the township in any way, shape, or form, after 60 days, the township has the right to put a stop work order on the development. And there was a reason for doing that. And I just want to make sure that it's in the agreement.
Staff could certainly check in the agreement. I think there are other mechanisms to enforce payment of any of agreed dollars and or timeline of development. Any other questions, Councillor Meadows?
I just have another question. When we sat here as a council last month, or a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was almost a month ago, with regards to this agreement, we put a hold on it until we were to get information back on the bridge with regards to our fire services. That was the premise of putting this whole thing basically on hold, was some of that and the additions of some of this other stuff. I'd just like to know why this is being brought forward now without a report with regards to the engineering report, where that was to be brought forward to this council prior to bringing this forward.
Certainly, I'll go to Mary for the answer on that. But I think just to clarify, that wasn't the intention of council scheduling a second meeting here. The question's been answered in the staff report itself. There was no direction to do further engineering from council to staff. I think it was to confirm that we had engineering on that bridge and that it's satisfactory to the township in that regard. But I'll let Ms. Feely answer the question.
Thank you, through your worship. So this was something as part of all of the comments that were raised at the last council meeting. We looked further into the bridge as well. And when this was raised a couple years ago, there was input from township staff, including fire, that confirmed that this structure, there were no load restrictions on it. As well, Burnsides did go out and do a visual inspection on Monday and said that there had been no further deterioration to the bridge and no changes to the recommendations at this time.
Through your worship, supplemental then. Do we have a document from Burnside with a stamp on it that states that they will be responsible as an inspector of that bridge, stating that our fire service trucks will be able to go across that bridge?
Through your worship, there is an email signed by an engineer saying that they did go out and inspect it. So.
And Ms. Feely, that's based off of the original inspection documents that was submitted to us last year or the year before?
Correct. So it's just confirming their previous findings that was in the formal report that is with the township.
I just want to make sure that that's been discussed and brought forward. If anything happens out there, I know who to blame.
Okay. Any further questions, Councillor Meadows?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Councillor O'Leary?
Through the chair, that was my only concern, was the bridge. So I guess my question to Ms. Feely is, what's the date on the inspection? Has it been in the last 2 years, last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years that this complete physical inspection has been performed? Or do you just have a letter saying that it was inspected?
Ms. Feely?
Through your worship, no, the report was done in 2023 and it's done every 2 years. So there will be another inspection done later this year. But in the meantime, in response to the concerns that were raised at the last meeting, they did go out and physically inspect it this week.
Any further questions, Councillor O'Leary?
No.
Councillor Simpson?
Through the chair, I too had that concern about the bridge because council was informed that in previous terms of council, that bridge had been brought up to council as having concerns and that a fire truck would not be able to go through that bridge. I think we would be negligent if we didn't ensure that that doesn't happen, that once the subdivision comes in, that council doesn't have to spend an additional $2 or $3 million to rehabilitate a bridge. And I would hate to find that out later that once the subdivision is done, that we didn't collect any money from them if that's what should have happened prior to this approval, right? So I have that serious concern there with regard to the bridge, and I would like to see something more wholesome, perhaps a report in terms of what came to council previously and why it came to council at that time, and what we did after to remediate any issues that may have been present at that time. Supplemental to that, I have a couple other questions as well. With regard to the subdivision agreement and the wording that we have, if a number of units come forward as not having water at those sites once the wells have been dug, is there any risk to the municipality where the municipality would have to put a municipal system at that location?
Okay, so let's park that for conversation in camera.
That's fine.
Okay, and second question?
Second question is with regard to design standards. I know that at the last council, we put forward monies and allocated monies to ensure that a design standards update would occur. With regard to the subdivision agreement and the drawings that we have, I haven't seen any design standard relating to the streets. I know we're not putting in sidewalks, but are we putting in street lighting for one? Another thing would be, are we putting edging along the edge of the roads so they're not just falling off into a ditch? Is it going to be a ditch? How big of a ditch is it? Or is it going to be a swale?
Ms. Feely, I can
Yeah.
certainly
Through
pass it
your
off to
worship.
someone else if you like to.
Yeah, and Josh is on the call as well, or John is here. So I will hand that question off to one of our engineers. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Maitland?
Through your worship, yes, I can confirm there was a street lighting plan provided, which was approved by our electrical review consultant. And as well, we reviewed the ditching for the subdivision, flow calculations and other design details were provided and reviewed, and were consistent with the current township standards for the rural cross section that is being proposed for this development. So at the current time, we have no further concerns with the design as it has been submitted, and all of our numerous comments have been addressed over the course of, I believe, 5 submissions in total.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson?
As a supplement, are those design standards that were from the 90s, or is that the updated design standards that we paid for last year?
Through your worship, the design standard for that cross section it does not change in the updated standard. It's a fairly typical standard, and we have prepared a draft update to the standards, which should be coming forward shortly. And at the current time, we have no further concerns with the design. Just to clarify, I believe those standards were from 2005 previously, and we have undertaken review of them in the course of our updates, and haven't seen a need to update that particular standard at this time.
Thank you.
Pardon?
Councillor.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, in terms of the entrance at Street A from Concession 5, in the technical drawings, I do notice that there is a median. Is that a median that residents can drive over, or is that a permanent barrier? And if so, how would residents for lots 18, 19, 20 get to their homes? Can they drive over that median, or do they have to go around? In the drawing?
So, Mr. Maitland, you could maybe potentially answer that question, but I believe it is a fully constructed concrete asphalt median in the center of Street A coming into the development.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have that particular drawing in front of me at the moment, but I know that all of our, again, I don't believe there was any concerns with access. As part of our review, everything met the standards and requirements for access for all of the residents.
Sorry, my question was, would residents in lots 18, 19, and 20 have to go around the median, or would they be able to enter their lots directly going over the median?
I would have to take a look at that drawing to answer that question. I'm afraid I don't have it handy at the moment.
So they'd have, as my understanding on the drawings, they'd have to go around.
So your understanding is that they would have to go around. My concern is that we don't have those design standards being presented in the report and in the subdivision agreement. And I don't know if it's standard practice that would be included, and perhaps they ought to be.
Okay, and I might just add, Mr. Thompson, would you like to come up and sit at the front here? And Mr. Wilmot, so you can come up and join them, so that if there's any questions, please use and just use the mic there to make sure it's on.
Your worship, to Councillor Simpson, all good questions to ask, but it's helpful to understand how we get to this point. And we get to this point only if all of the subdivision drawings have been reviewed and meet the current standards. And we wouldn't be at this point if they didn't. So it's easy to say first, all the standards were met. It's also easy to say that although you haven't finally approved the new standards, the standards as being presented to you have been met. Okay, so and in fact, you say it's not in the subdivision agreement. Well, understand that an annex to the subdivision agreement is the plans. So it actually is in the subdivision agreement. The approved plans are part of the subdivision agreement. They're not external from the subdivision agreement. They are the agreement. They're in there. So whatever plans that we finally, after signing the subdivision agreement, when council sees fit and the owner sees fit to do so, we will then go to the plans that we already say are correct, and we'll give them a stamp that says accepted for construction. Of course, we can't accept them for construction until we have a subdivision agreement. But they're those plans, and all they will get is an accepted for construction. So the point here is we wouldn't even be here if we thought that they didn't match the standards, because if they didn't match the standards, we wouldn't be saying, let's get sign the subdivision agreement.
Mr. Thompson, while I respect that position and I respect that staff have reviewed standards, as council, I think it's important that council sees those standards and those design standards being presented in the report to council, so that when we approve it, that we understand in principle what it is exactly that we're approving. I don't know that many members of this council even understood that there was a median that wouldn't be impassable, or that residents wouldn't be able to cross, that residents would in fact have to go all the way around up to the 2nd Street before they can go back to their homes, which are closer to Side Road 5. And so, things like that are important for us to see and understand, because that would give us the opportunity to say, hey, the standards may be this and that may be okay, but it may be important to have, that median not be so permanent in front of those homes to allow access for residents who are living in lots 18, 19, and 20. And if they can't go there, then maybe they need to be made aware when they purchase their homes, because after the subdivision goes in, the residents for those 3 or 4 homes are going to come to us and say, hey, I can't get my car across, and you guys, the town, need to now fix this for me. And the township may have to spend additional monies to address that. And while that may be wrong or right, that's just the simple fact of it. And we need to be cognizant of that before we make the decision, not after. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go around first to see if there's other questions, Councillor Meadows. So Councillor Borzos, Deputy Mayor.
Through your worship, I just have a comment on the bridge, because I spoke with the fire chief, and I believe the fact that we were basing it all on that the bridge was deemed unacceptable and then redeemed acceptable was the fact of the incorrect bridge was being named as unacceptable. It wasn't Bridge 41 that X amount of years ago was deemed that it wasn't fit to be used for emergency equipment. And that was just a mistake by whoever brought that up. Like, I actually spoke with the chief about it, but I don't have the report. And it was ideally a mistake that the wrong bridge was labeled our fire chief. Township that's responsible for stuff like that. So that being said, I believe it's been clarified on the bridge. I don't understand why that would still be any sort of a point of contention when there is a stamped engineered approval from 2023 and they've come out and looked at it again and said it's all right. And I believe the Councillor Meadows brought it up that at some point it was said that it wasn't all right. But I believe that was just a mistake, that the wrong bridge was labeled as incorrect. It wasn't actually Bridge 41. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Borzos, any questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Meadows.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Deputy Mayor, with regards to the bridge. It wasn't just this fire chief, or it wasn't this fire chief, it was the past 2 to 3 fire chiefs prior to that. Okay. Well, there's only one bridge in the area there, so like it's the only bridge that was there, and that's what the bridge they were referring to. So they both of them went out to inspect the area. There was also supposed to be a second entrance into this subdivision, which got changed. There was a lot of other things that you weren't involved with, and you know, I'm not putting the fault on you. You know, you weren't privy to that information at the time. The mayor was quite privy to the information, and we were told by the past chiefs that there was a problem with that bridge. So for anybody to sit there and deny that, we were brought that information as a council on several occasions, and that's what, and also for the straightening of the road. So there was a lot of issues that were prior to this with regards to this development that held up this development as long as it did. And also from our past planning, Jackie Chicklin, she brought all these issues up as well. And, you know, like these are professional people that we had hired to look into all this. So that's with regards to that. And with regards to what Councillor Simpson said, I totally agree with him. I'm sorry I missed that meeting. I didn't see it there. I see it as a big fire emergency issue, especially when we have the porta tanks that we'd have to set up in certain areas and do relays along a street that has a restriction on it through a center median. So I'm kind of concerned about this.
Thank you, Councillor Meadows. Before I go back to the Deputy Mayor for initial or supplemental comment, you are correct in the fact that this has come to council numerous times. We've had discussions around this table. Staff have done their due diligence. So on the first aspect of the bridge, we've got documentation from an engineer in 2023 indicating that there is no load restrictions on it, and I'm going to take that for face value. That's the most recent document we have. Again, the visual inspection as of Monday indicates that there's been no change. I'm going to take that information over a report that was done 8 years ago, which, by the way, I can't even find. So unless somebody can produce that report, I don't even know what was said in that report as to what, because I've heard a couple things that have come out today is one councillor yourself indicating that the bridge had a weight restriction, and then another councillor saying that there was a concern. So that's a two different approach here. If the fire department said, we have a concern with this bridge, then maybe that's what the report actually said, that there was a concern with this bridge, and they wanted engineering to go out there and confirm that there was no load restriction. So I'm going to take that as an example, as the fire department's chiefs are not engineers. Potentially they were maybe saying that there might be a concern with this, we should look at it. And as far as I'm concerned, it has been looked at and it's satisfactory. On the other aspect of the fire department, and again, it's concerning that when that second entrance was not proposed, that's why the median went in on the fire department's request.
Well, if it was, it's something new to me.
Okay, well, I'm just finding it concerning that you pick one aspect and argue against it, and then you take another aspect and you don't think it's satisfactory to their request. Because at the time, there was the idea that a full one entrance into development could have a blockage somewhere along the way. And so the intention was to put a median in there, because then that prevents you from restriction of both lanes, and you'd still have available one lane. So that's one of the reasons why the fire department wanted a median in there, and I think that supports some practical engineering aspects too. Maintenance, on the other hand, I don't know, but engineering aspect, I think it purports that information. So I'll go back to Deputy Mayor if you wanted to provide any additional comment on your point of view that you had earlier.
Yeah, I appreciate it wasn't around here, and my due diligence was that I spoke with the chief. That is our chief right now. He stated he has no issues with that bridge. He's actually provided me now with an email stating that there is no issue with that bridge, and that was literally my only point. So if that was a point of contention, I don't believe it's something that we should have to deal with, because it's been dealt with.
Okay. Councilor O'Leary.
Through the chair, I have a concern with this boulevard between the lanes with maintenance, winter maintenance. I don't know, like, whether they'll pave the road right away or whether it'll be gravel. So I don't know whether it'll have something to do or interfere with summer maintenance, but definitely there'll be an issue with winter maintenance if they have to go in to a farther point, turn around and come back to get into their residence. I think it's absurd that you can't just drive in and drive directly in your laneway. You shouldn't have to take a road course to go into your property. I mean, you're paying $1 million for a piece of property that you have to drive a half a mile out of the way to come back to get into it. It's absurd. Like, I think that needs to be clarified. And with the bridge, this is not the first time I've heard that there was an issue with the bridge. In the previous council, it was brought up that there was an issue. I'm not 100% sure who the fire chief was at the time, but I think that before we pass this development, we need to get some clarification on these two items, because we don't want to be costing the township additional funds to do something. If it's a matter, it's been, I don't know how many years, like 10, 15 years now. What's another 6 months? If not, we can do it sooner. But we need letters stating that the examinations have been done. If they need to do core samples on the bridge to make sure the concrete is sufficient, there's no damage, and then this thing with the media so that the people can get directly into their residence. I think that needs to be addressed before we pass. Like, I don't know. I just think we're putting the cart before the horse if we pass this.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Can I ask though, so staff have suggested or have already stated today that we have a visual inspection from Burnsides. We have their initial report from 2023. So I'm asking you, what more do you want to see? Because from where I'm sitting here is our engineers have signed off saying that there is no load restriction on that bridge. So are we not going to take their professional advice, or like, I'm asking you, like, what would satisfy you then? Or what more would you need to see from our engineers on that bridge? Because they've clearly indicated that there's no issues with it. Other than maybe the guardrails up to it.
Well, I don't think, personally, I don't think the weather conditions last week, if they did their inspection last week, would have been adequate for an inspection, because last week was very stormy. And I mean, if you're going to inspect, I want to see them do the whole 9 yards. I want to see them get down underneath the bridge. If necessary, I want to see them do core samples of the surface to check the concrete, check its proctor, make sure that it's not deteriorating, and then a letter to us stating that they guarantee this bridge for a minimum of 10 years. I mean, who knows how long it's going to take for them to develop this subdivision, because right at the present time, we have buildings that aren't going up, and the reason they're not going up is because of the interest rates and the cost. And then there's a recessionary thing that's coming into focus right now. So, I mean, even if we approve this, I can't see them selling these houses in today's market. So I think if we delay it, get our proof, then move forward, I think that's the primary thing we should do. We want to be open, transparent, but we don't want to cost the taxpayers additional money.
Okay. Councillor Borzos, did you have a comment, question?
Yes, through the chair. No, I'm just trying to make sense of all of this, but if I understand correctly, Ms. Feely suggested that there is another upcoming inspection, a regular biannual inspection for this bridge. Do you know when that may happen? Or when is the anniversary? Do you know the month?
Mr. Wilmot, I'll go to you. Just turn the mic on, please.
Sorry. Yeah.
Through the chair. It's usually done in the spring, in summer months when the water table goes down a little bit, that they can get in and they do a visual inspection. They tap on the concrete to make sure it's not hollow. They do not do core samples or anything like that on this type of inspection.
So so that could be possibly coming up in the next 2 to 4 months, sort of. So I guess for me, a happy medium would be is just to defer this decision until that new inspection, biannual inspection comes, which is not a visual inspection. It's a much more than that. Comes with a full report with a stamp on it from an engineer who inspected it. And if they deem it proper and compliant, then we have a fresh new report. Now that he said, she said, 4 fire chiefs ago, somebody said this, or 2 years ago, the report said that. No, we have a 2025 report. We approve it in 2025 and it's done. That would be my suggestion and the way I would handle this. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Meadows and Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, just Mr. Wilmots, do you have any idea what year that bridge was built?
No, through the chair, no, I don't offhand. It's all on the inspection report. And I went back as far as I could find the previous inspection report. I think it was 2013 was when I got. Everyone up until today, there's been very little or no change in the structure from the first one I seen until the one for 2023.
And then supplemental.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, it's obvious that the deputy mayor's got information on this. I think it would have been beneficial for all of council to have at least had some updates on this bridge prior to this meeting. And I believe that's what we asked for at the last meeting, to make sure that we were all up to date on certain things. I just think everybody should have been more, up to date on it. So.
Okay, thank you. The bridge was circa 1960. Councillor Simpson.
Through the chair, and perhaps our CAO can answer this. With regard to the bridge, is there any possibility to understand what report went to council previously? Do we have records of what reports regarding that bridge had been sent? Is it possible to get that report?
Through your worship, I believe the OLT referenced a transportation impact study done by an independent engineer back in 2017. And that referenced earlier Burnside reports doing the structural analysis. So Burnside would have done the structural analysis of the bridge. Those structural analyses went forward to the other independent engineer. That independent engineer made reference to those reports, gave that evidence to the OLT. The OLT then made conditions in that regard. So that information would have been made available to council
At that time.
at that time. Yes.
Can this council be made aware of that information too? The other thing is, I think the mayor just noted that the bridge was built in 1960. Is that correct? What's the life cycle of a bridge of this nature? Would it be 60 years? Because I think now we're at 60 years.
Your worship, there's been bridges there that are 100 years old.
Okay.
It's you know, how they're maintained and if they're disintegrating. And since the first report that I could find, like I said previous, there's been minimal depreciation on the structure from the time the first inspections were done.
Okay. I would appreciate a report on that bridge coming forward that is encompassing of all that information, so that council knows what's going on with that bridge. Additionally, with regard to maintenance on the streets, would our plows be able to get in and through those roads? And what is the, I understand that it's a 26-meter concession or roadway, but what is the roadway at 11 or 12 meters? Is that what's currently being proposed? So each side is going to be 12 meters, or the entire roadway is at 12 meters?
The normal width, sorry, through the chair, the normal width of pavement is between 7 and 8 meters wide on most roads.
Per lane?
Per lane. So your 16 meters of pavement is total width. Then you have your 1 to 1.5 meters of shoulders on both sides. So there's no problem with the plows going through there. And with the medium, to Mr. Leary's question about maintenance, there isn't an issue of us plowing it before or after it's paved. We pave gravel roads or plow gravel roads all the time now. And regards to the boulevard, it's no different having that boulevard or if you lived on a one-way street. You'd have to continue the full way around a one-way street to get to your house. And you know, you get out faster than the other ones. So it's not an issue for maintenance either with the boulevard.
So do you mean that this road is not paved?
It will be, but
Oh, it will
but
be.
if we had to go in and maintain it prior to paving,
Oh, okay.
there wouldn't be an issue. But in the subdivision agreement, the roads would be paved and shoulders are all done. So there's no issue at all. When we would take over the road, it would be paved.
Sorry, the confusion is because I don't have design standards in front of me that I can reference, right? And if I had that, I think I'd be able to understand it a lot better, and instead of having to keep asking similar questions. So to be clear, we have a 26-meter concession. How is, or road allowance, how is that divided?
Have you got the detailed plans? If you've got the whole set of plans, look at the details. It's all there.
Where is it?
We'll check the other plan that has the details.
Which
Cross
plan is
sections.
that?
I don't know if you've got the set of plans. I'm not.
I've
here.
got 223 pages here.
Yeah, okay.
I don't see that.
In there.
I've looked through it. I haven't,
It's part of the plans.
but we haven't received it. Council hasn't received it. That's the problem.
So you're asking Councillor Simpson, you're saying you would like our design criteria for the municipality.
No, I'd like to see the design standard for that road so that we can see where the median is going to be put forward, how much space is being allocated to the roadway, and how much is being allocated to a shoulder, and how much is allocated to a ditch, if that's what's going to happen, and how is that ditch going to look like? And I think for this subdivision, I get it. It's 25 homes. We're not at a big issue, right? The big issue is going to come when we're looking at 2,000 houses and the subdivision agreement is being pushed through, and council won't have the the ability to ask these questions. And I worry for that. This is where my concern is. This is a 25 home subdivision, but we should do all the due diligence as we would if this were a 2,000 home subdivision. And I think when that 2,000 home subdivision comes, I want to make sure there's design standards that exactly tell me how big the road is, where the sidewalks are going in, what the plan is for street lighting and everything else. So that's my concern. So if somebody could answer how that design standard would look, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around this wee bit here too. So the township has a design standard manual that we utilize for building new roads within developments. This may apply to it, this may not apply to it. I'm not sure if a design standard has a median-based road. However, saying that, everything that's been designed here is an actual lane of traffic. And as Mr. Maitland's indicated, is characteristic with a rural setting with roadside ditching and shoulders. So, and from what I've heard so far from Mr. Maitland and others, is that that's a typical road base for a municipality. So again, I'm trying to understand. You're looking for the detailed construction plans for this road and how it's laid out.
If we're going to be putting forward design standards, and I respect our staff, I respect our consultants, I think they're doing an excellent job. But I think for me as a counselor to, looking at a project and to understand what's actually being put forward, I'd like to see what the design standard is being proposed for the specific project. So if there's a median, I want to see a picture saying, hey, when that median is coming in, this is what's being proposed. In those areas where there is no median being proposed, this is what it's going to look like. And I'd like to see that in the drawings and part of the subdivision.
Sorry, so I'm going to go with Mr. Maitland, but I believe that is part of the drawings. I believe we have a cross section of our road network within the area. Now, if somebody could tell me what plan that is, I could look it up myself, but I don't know if we have that information offhand. But I'm pretty sure that's standard, Mr. Maitland, if you could, that's a standard process within all developments. The design standards of a road are part of the subdivision agreement.
Yes, in the sense that the drawings and road design must be consistent with the township standards in order for approval to be given to those drawings, which in this case they are. I do have the standard cross sections for this subdivision. They are in drawing STD-1 of the drawing package. I don't know if you have that available.
I do. Thank you.
So in those drawings, it shows the difference between the portion of the road both inside and outside of that where that median is. So it's slightly wider within the median to allow for the median and emergency access. And then in the loop where there is no median, it's not quite as wide.
All right, so again, I'm looking at plans here myself, and if you could confirm, so it's a 3-meter raised traffic island coming into there, 2% slope on each side, 8% slope into the ditch, and 3-to-1 ditches. And we're looking at a 5-meter, 6-meter paved section on each side of that, and a 2.15 meter slope, and then a ditch of 2.75. I'm not sure if you're confirming that or not.
Mayor Anderson, could you confirm on the record which page of the report that we've received from staff it's located on?
So staff took the liberty of providing everyone information a week ago, or sorry, several weeks ago now, prior to the council meeting with the draft subdivision agreement and all drawings pertaining to the development.
And I did request from staff that a copy of all of those be printed for me to be able to see it. I wasn't given any copy personally. I think a copy was made available to council as a whole. I've reviewed what was presented and I didn't see that in there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, staff presented us with an overview of all the drawings and that prior to the subdivision agreement. Staff also made an enlarged copy and put it in the mailroom for all of us to see when we had time, when we were coming in or whatever. So just to let you know that staff has done the due diligence and has put the copies out there. I read the cross sections of the roads as well, and they're all there as well. So thank you.
Okay, I did believe, I'm not sure if you have any further comment, actually. Yeah, I thought you saw your hand up. Okay. Okay. So Councillor Simpson, you had one question that we were going to deal with in camera, and there might be others. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to go in camera, and then we can have that further discussion.
Through your worship, I'd like to go on camera to talk about an identifiable individual as well, please.
Okay, unfortunately, I won't allow that at the present time. We do have our solicitor here. We can potentially go in for solicitor-client privilege, but on the item of the agenda is to deal with the subdivision agreement itself.
Well, it is part of the subdivision agreement.
So then I'll let you raise that concern at this, and when we go in camera, and then if I feel that's appropriate, we will discuss, and if not, then we will stick to the subdivision agreement itself.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Council, do I have a mover to go in camera? Moved by Councillor Simpson and seconded by Councillor O'Leary. Pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, Council of the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio convene in closed session at 3:03 p.m. to address the following items: advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality. 620242, Ontario Incorporated, in signature Adjala Developments Incorporated Subdivision Development Agreement. Any questions on the recommendation? All those in favor? And that is carried. So we're now on camera. All right, council, so we're going to reconvene in open session now. There is a recommendation that we reconvene in open session at 4:34 PM and report on closed items. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? I have Councillor Borzos, seconded by Deputy Mayor Laux. All in favor? And that is carried. And I just wanted to report that we did meet in camera to discuss the SB Agile Developments Agreement, and staff are to proceed as directed in camera. All right, so that takes us on to 6.1, which is bylaws. So there's bylaw on the agenda for the subdivision agreement. Sorry. Thank you. All right, we deal with staff reports in first. So that staff report PLA 2025-006 dated February 25th, 2025 regarding SB Agile Developments Incorporated, 2620242 Ontario Incorporated, and Signature Agile Developments Incorporated subdivision development agreement be received. In that council grant approval for the proposed red line revisions to the draft plan as presented in the report, and that council authorize execution of the subdivision agreement for the approved draft plan under section 5125 of the Planning Act to satisfy the conditions of draft approval and permit registration of the plan of subdivision for the subject lands legally described as part of Lot 2, Concession 4, Township of Adjala-Tosorontio. Do I have a mover for that motion? Deputy Mayor Laux, seconder, please. Councillor Borzos. All those in favor of the report?
Can I have a recorded vote, please?
Certainly. Madam Clerk, a request for recorded vote from Councillor Meadows.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Meadows, in favor or against?
Against?
Councillor Borzos, in favor or against?
In favor.
Councillor O'Leary, in favor or against? Councillor Simpson, in favor or against? Deputy Mayor Laux, in favor or against?
In favor.
And Mayor Anderson, in favor or against?
Favor?
That's 3 in favor, 3 against.
Okay, so that staff report is defeated, 3-3. So we're going on to bylaws then, so that's 6.1. So that bylaw 2025-010 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a subdivision agreement between the corporation of the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio and SB Agile Developments Incorporated, 2620242 Ontario Incorporated, in Signature Agile Developments Incorporated be enacted. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Deputy Mayor Laux, a seconder. Moved by myself, second by myself. Any questions on the resolution? All those in favor?
Have a recorded vote, please.
Certainly. Madam Clerk, a request for a recorded vote from Councillor Meadows.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Meadows, in favor or against?
In favor?
Councillor Borzos, in favor or against?
In favor.
Councillor O'Leary, in favor or against? Councillor Simpson, in favor or against? Deputy Mayor Laux, in favor or against?
Favor.
And Mayor Anderson, in favor or against?
In favor?
That's 5 in favor, 1 against.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-1. And we're on item 7, which is confirmation bylaw. That bylaw 2025-014 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings for the Council of the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio at its special council meeting held on February 25th, 2025 be enacted. Mover, please. Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Borzos. Any questions on the bylaw? All those in favor? And that is carried. And we are adjourned at 4:38 p.m.